Planet Sewers. Sorry I'm a couple days late with this, but here we are. So we have the Wortham Primates completely finished with the walkthrough. My rendition is a little different than it actually is in Houston Zoo, but I think that we got the essence of what this walkthrough looks like. So we're going to finish up with the speed build today at the last section, and then we'll do a little bit of a tour and some cinematics. I did struggle a little bit with the new free look camera mode. I really did struggle with it. That's all I'm going to say. I kind of miss Teddycam. My basic thing that I miss about it is that Q and E would rotate the camera previously with Teddycam, and with Q and E in the free look mode, it pushes you up or down in your view. So that was a little hard. I personally don't like the cursor when I'm doing a tour in my shot, and to turn the camera left and right, you have to use the cursor, unless I'm missing something. So maybe I need to go look around some more. But anyway, so we have this little food truck that's off behind the Wortham Primates. And hello, Ruby. She says hi to everybody. She misses you guys. And this is over at the end of the elephants and right before the okapi. I'm not sure how you say that. But anyway, so we're finishing off that little section right back there before I fill it in with all the plant work. So then we'll get into finishing that little walk area. So here I just used some wood. Note to future self and everyone watching, make sure you check your wood when you're using this in the way that I did for climbable tacks. This wood actually is climbable. It created some issues for me. This is sandbox, so I can just turn off the escapes. However, if this were franchise mode, I probably would have switched it out after I did all this work. So anyways, if you're looking for how I made the circular ones, it's in the previous video. I'll put in a little link right here. Bloop. You can click that and it'll take you to the last video to see that circle. We're going to just kind of go around. I'm not going to show everything that I did, but I did take the circle and create a bigger one. So I just put the mud pillar right in the middle, and I went ahead and extended this out so that I could just make it bigger and not have all the overlapping pieces. I wasn't too worried about it being perfect because this circle here is not a circular path. It's not perfect in the sense of being a perfect circle. Anyways, so I just used this to, get it going, and then took out all the extra ones so that I wouldn't have so many overlapping on that center section. So that was how I extended this circle out from the one I had made previously, which is why I stuck it over here, was to remind myself to do that. And then I just went around and either tucked away or eliminated the boards that I didn't need. Some of them I'll switch over to, kind of just tucking them along underneath on the edge, lengthwise instead of straight out, like I did right there, and cover up that little edge. And then the rest of them I'll just tuck along like I did right there, and we'll give them a little nudge down in some areas. Make sure that they're not creating that little sea fighting on the other plane there. And we'll just continue around. So that was how I covered up this path and gave it kind of a nice woodsy feel, instead of just using that wood, I guess, chip path, because I really liked the rails here. I didn't want to do custom rails all the way through here because I knew it was super curvy, and I just thought that this would do better. So here we go, almost done with that. Last little bit, and that was how I did this circle. So we're gonna go ahead and finish off the rest of the path. I'm not gonna show everything. We're gonna cover up this little section with a tree because they do have a big tree right there in the middle. And then this is the end of it where I decided to go ahead and show how I did this section. It's really just grabbing a little bit here and aligning the surface and letting that serve to get this down, and then getting it all lined up, and then kind of moving some here and there so that it's got some pattern to it instead of just straight. And then I went ahead and grabbed this little group since it should be flat, and we'll get that set in there and tuck it underneath that little black part right there. And then we have a nice little thing we're going to build right here. I think this is just, service. They don't want guests going through here, so they did have some little gates. I think in one image I saw the metal one, and another image they actually have the wooden gate. So I went for the wooden gate, and just super simple little square gate with a support beam along the back to keep it from getting wonky. And I put in a guest barrier curb right there to see if that will, keep the guests from walking back there. So far it seems to be working. And then I put the little sign on it as well, like, hey, you can't come in here. And I just used a full stop for my wheel, and just kind of played around with the different full stops, aka period if you are in the US. But in the game you have to search for full stop to get that little round small black circle that I use there. And then I just copied it right over here, and I decided I would use the stop instead of the no entry, I guess, at some point, and changed it. So we're gonna get that in there, and now we're gonna go ahead and get the plants all around, because as you walk along from this side it is full of plants. And then they have, obviously some kind of barrier there. They actually have a lot smaller habitats than what I built. It's, I think, about 3 or 4 of them, and they have mostly smaller primates inside of these habitats, different tamarins, just a whole bunch of different smaller primates that Planet Zoo currently does not have. So for variety, what I did is made a really big mandrill habitat and made it look like 2 habitats. And you'll see how I did that here in a little bit. So I'm just kind of completing these little details on this side of the habitat. And then later I kind of decide to do some other things, and I have to move the plants that I end up putting in. And that's okay, because right here the plants definitely are in my way. So we're just running along. Here I didn't bother with moving the trees. And then this is the Babirusa habitat, which we're going to work on next time, and get this whole section all finished. And then we'll start working, I think, through the cats. Is what I'm going to work on next in this zoo, and kind of head towards the gorillas. I may change my mind, who knows. And I decided that right here I wanted another one of these to kind of block off where I had put in a little staff hut right here. I don't think this is actually in the zoo, but since I have this connected in, I decided that's how I would do that right there. And then I copied that over and I turned it really green. Originally this was what I was going to do for the barrier for the mandrills, just to keep them in the habitat. But I end up deciding to do something a little bit different. But I do leave the little green wood door fence here so that it kind of blocks the views through. That was really what I was going for as well. I don't want guests stopping and looking along here if possible, because our guests are known to do that in Planet Zoo because they know there's a habitat there, so they'll stand there and look through things that they're really not going to be able to see through and say the view is terrible. So we're going to start working on some different sunshades over these platforms here. So I did check on this one if this was climbable, and this particular one I think was not climbable. However, on the next one I forgot to check and I used one that is. This one may be climbable. I can't remember. I'd have to see the tag. This is log wall. So if log wall is climbable, that may be a problem. But I know for one little area it didn't matter. But there was the other one that I make, whatever I used there did. So I may not have used the same material here. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why I was having so many problems. So we have this cute little log cover here, and that's gonna look out into the mandrill habitat. And then I kind of struggled with how I wanted this to sit over here. And when I looked at the images in Google Earth, it really, kind of sits how it is here. It's not in a perfect alignment with anything. It just kind of sticks in there. I tried extending it out, but I ended up not liking it it just didn't sit in the space very well, so I kind of moved it around and then ended up taking some of it off. It just didn't sit right on that left side with the extra overhang. Also, the amount of space that I really had to build this enclosure that I'm getting ready to build for them. So I just used some concrete and the mesh and went straight up with it. Went through a couple of different design methods with it, and this is what I ended up choosing. So I'm lining it up here, and I'm using those logs to kind of give me a good feel for being straight with that edge out there. And here's where I was like, ooh, I really just don't have enough room to do this how I have in mind, because when I get to the other side of it, it's just not going to fit. The animals aren't going to, bless you doggy, be able to make it there. So you can see here is where I was like, let me take that back off, and we're going to scoot it right back over where we had it, so that I have enough room to create a space for them to kind of come in. And I think I did realize that these were climbable logs. I think they are. And I needed to make sure that they're not going to be able to grab that log through the enclosure. And that's one of the biggest struggles with climbing animals, is that in theory they would not be able to escape this, in the sense of being able to go through that and get onto the climbable item. But in the game, if it's too close, then they can. So again, I'm using that whole in to kind of straighten this piece out, which I'd already kind of done, and then changed my mind. And then I decided to do a little bit more of a curve right here, and then go straight, and then do, I guess, not really a curve, but an angle to bring it into this area. I do bring this in a little bit and then come back around. So we're gonna kind of get up in that corner, and then we will come back around with it as well. So originally I was like, oh, I'm a little too close here because I'm not gonna be able to cut back around and make this look like an enclosure. So right there I had to kind of scoot it all over and then move that last one so we can kind of come back. I know that the mandrills really can't all make it right up in there, and then that's okay. So I think I put a couple of plants around later to kind of fill this in, and that way you have a view. They can actually move through here a little better than I thought they could. This is a pretty tight squeeze through a lot of this, so I just took this right up to the edge. When you look through here in Google Earth, a lot of this is just a planted area. It's wooded, like a nature trail. And then like I said just earlier in the video, like 3 or 4 habitats that are back here. I went ahead and just made one really big habitat that looks like 2. And so we're gonna go around and we're gonna head towards this outlook. This one just had a really small cage back here with some other primates right in front of it. And then so each one of these platforms kind of had their own little thing, but I was just out of space in comparison to what the zoo has space for in game versus how it was really mapped out. So it is hard to do some of these recreations, and sometimes I have to forego what's actually in the zoo and work within the limitation of the game. I like to try to keep it as close as possible to as if I were in franchise mode, for 2 reasons. I just like the challenge, and the other reason is if I decide to upload something into the workshop, it is going to work regardless of whether you put it in a franchise zoo or you put it in sandbox. You don't have to worry about I've got this cool thing off the workshop and my animals hate it, and now I've got to make it bigger, or they need more water, or they need more climbing, or whatever the case may be. And so when I do put stuff on the workshop, I do make sure that it fits the animal's needs as much as possible. I like to make sure the plants match the animal that I built it for, which is kind of tricky, when you have like a primate thing. A lot of primates can go into certain exhibits or habitats that you build for them, but the plants may be very different. I've done that when I've taken things off the workshop and changed what I put in there, but I really like the plants. I'll hit X and then replace the plant and delete it with something else. That's one method that I'll use to kind of replant. And sometimes I will just leave them. Like this particular habitat right on the edge, there are some plants that the mandrills don't like. I think, unfortunately, mandrills were not the best choice for this area. They really don't like a lot of plants in general. There's just not a whole lot of plants to put in their habitat compared to some of the other animals. Their biome, where they live, their region, is just a smaller choice, I guess, a pool of plants to pick from. So right here I did notice, hey, that little window ledge is sticking through. I really didn't want to show the windows. I guess I could have pulled that out, but then it doesn't make the nice corner on the edge over there, so I went ahead and switched it out and put the one that shows the windows on the building. So we're gonna just come to the other side of the building and tuck this right along the edge, and we'll put a door on the building eventually, and we'll get this right here. And then I decided I'll use the concrete to finish it off. And then here is, I was working on this and I really struggled with it. It took me several tries. So I did something a little different. It's more kind of like your, I guess, quote unquote stop motion. I should have taken the UI off, and then there I do. So you just kind of get a quick idea of how I put it together. I had turned off the screen recorder. I was like, oh man, but I was close enough to where I could just back up and then redo it, each little step that I had done. So you get an idea of how I built that guy, and it is on the workshop. And that particular one created a lot of issues for me. I think if this is climbable with these logs here, they must just not be able to reach it because it's so close to the path. It's not in their traversable area. Whereas with that circular one, it is, and it just created all kinds of problems because it is climbable. So that was really frustrating. I spent probably an hour lifting things and putting them back down. And here I'm making a bigger circle, so I just went with spinning it around instead of using the mud pillar. And then it was so close, I decided to go ahead and put these plaster, I forget what that's called, a column, a pillar, whatever it is. I put that in the middle. But back to my story of my struggle with that little hut that I built. It did take me a while to figure it out that it was the hut that they were able to get a hold of, because I had solved the problem of them being able to get on the path with the wood covering that I'd used. And once I got finished building all of this and checked it again, I was like, hey, they can escape here and they can run all over the pass. And Mandrill are not a walkable walk-through habitat. So if one were to get up there, the guests are going to run screaming, ah, there's a loose animal and we're scared of it. So I went around to go figure out what was happening, and it turned out to be one pole when I finally started moving things up out of the way. And I could see that they could climb onto that one pole in that green little hut. Anyways, so, a little story of my struggles, so that maybe if it happens to you, it gives you some ideas on ways to figure out how to solve those issues when you know that there's no way they can get out there, which I did. I knew there's no way they could get on these paths. I had blocked it all with this right here, by putting this all the way around. So there was no way they should be getting up on there. But one by one, I removed climbable things by just lifting them. I grouped them all together, lifted up into the sky, and then looked again, and then lifted up into the sky and looked again until I could see, okay, this is what the problem was. As I rearranged things up and down to see, if I put the hut up, can they get on the ground? And that was my first thing. I was like, okay, yeah, no, they can't. So it's one of the huts. Which hut is it? So I was throwing the huts up in the sky until I found the one that had I could see the little green line in the middle of that thing. So enough about that. We're going to go ahead and fill in all of this here. As I was kind of looking around, I could tell, you can see into this with the height of my barriers, and when you walk through here you really can't. So I decided we'll go with the willows. All of the primates had willow as a plant that they are okay with. That tree did not bother them. And then I went ahead and grabbed this really big, what is this? a fig tree, for the strangler fig root tree. The reason I picked it was because it had good coverage and it spread on the top so you couldn't see in. And here I am making a tunnel so that they can get to the other side of the habitat, and I did this kind of in the edges of the habitats so that it wasn't real predominant that, hey, there's a hole, and that they can go underneath here. And I just took that path all the way out here with the tunnel, and then I just set that down and got rid of it, set it down, got rid of it until I had the same height as the other one, and that was how I dug the hole on the other side. Brought the terrain back, and here's where I decided, my trees need to go up in the air, so I used one of those editable signs so that I knew where to put them back, so I have the word height on it. And the way that it works is when you put it back down, just the letter Shicho, not the actual whole sign, which I did struggle with a little bit, getting that to get right back in the same spot. And I did that with the path when I was struggling with trying to find out where my issues were in the story I told earlier. So I did the same thing with the editable sign, lifted up in the sign, lifted up in the sky, and then put it back down. And we're just working our way around. I had debated with where to go with this. I kind of wanted to just, leave that as a lookout almost into the proboscis monkey, but it's really not supposed to be, and it's just a really tight squeeze here. So I just did the best I could with it. It's, I think I end up putting like a little climbing log in there so that, maybe they'll come over there and they'll climb through it. A little quick look at my desktop there. I'm not sure what I was doing. I guess I probably hit a wrong button. I'm really good at that. Sometimes I hit the window key. Sometimes I hit just different things I don't mean to bonk. I'm sure it happens to the best of us. And I decided I'll pull this little hut back some so I have more room to kind of fit this little skinny piece in. And we're gonna go ahead and use this pole idea. I decided I'll go ahead and put it on the corners. It's a little more, I guess, realistic that there'd probably be something a little more substantial right here than just, a mesh corner. And I kind of put that in different places where the barrier took some big turns. And then I'm going to use this right here for two purposes. One, to get the mandrills down into the tunnel and they can go across, as well as our keepers. So I'm looking at the staff traversable area, because I was pretty sure if the staff can make it, then my mandrills should be able to make it. So on this side, for some reason, it needed to be wider. I'm not sure what the issue was, but on one side, the width was okay. And I was like, well, let me just double wide this and see if it gets them up. And it did. You can see where it put it in. And they said, oh, let me check for, can the mandrills make it everywhere? And they could. So we're going to bring our trees out of the sky and put them back down. And then I decided it was time to kind of fill in. So we're going to fill up those dead spaces with some plants. Not all of it's supposed to be look here. There's specific places that the guests are supposed to be walking to go look. And I didn't do a lot of custom education boards through here. I just tucked them along on the rails. And then I did kind of a simple climbing rig here for them. Not too, as what's the word I'm looking for? Extravagant. There we go. They did have like a little swing right here, and they had a couple of things going on off of this little lookout where the monkeys or the primates that were in here could climb. So I put that in. On the other ones, I did borrow one from the workshop that I had in my blueprints that I had downloaded at one point, and I ended up, I'll show you what I did to it, and I'll talk about it when we get there. This I just did, real simple, little swing, and kept the little curve rope going, which I had a hard time finding the rope because European, apparently, which it does, R-O-P-E, European, so you're up, rope. I was like, where's all my rope? So once I found it, it was like, okay, this is called Planet Zoo rope. And then I was able to search and find it a little faster. I was really frustrated for a second. I was like, where'd it go? Surely it's called rope. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and outfit these mandrills with some enrichments and different things in the habitat so that they're happy. They have things to play with, they have things to eat, of course. And I decided to put the water pipes off in the corners away from, you know, the not customers, but the view of the guests. And then I just decided right here I would use an in-game climbing rig, and I just kind of moved it around to fit the space. And here is the one I got off the workshop. It's super cute. I split it into two, and I took this half and I put it in two different spots, one right here and then one in front of the other lookout. And then I put the other half of it over here by one of the enrichments and scooted the tree back. And here we are. We're gonna go walk through, and here's our cinematic of the walkthrough. I hope you guys really enjoy the Wortham Primate area. This was built by Zoobs, that last part we just saw, and the rest of it was built by me. So we have the very first habitat I did in here that has a bunch of lemurs, and I'll go ahead and put the links to the videos of these builds. And this is the other side as you walk through here. I really wish I could have walked through here, but I really struggled with getting the angles, so I ended up just kind of doing some cinematics left and right. This is a new method for me, so I hope it turns out pretty good. And this is the black and white, the anniversary lemurs. Over here I think I have some more lemurs, so I decided, you know, it was time to use some other animal than lemurs. What did we put in here? I don't think these are lemurs. In there we had, I can't remember, bonobos. And then this is the proboscis monkey habitat, which is the video before this. And I did fix the climbing rig back there. And then you walk past them, and this is the bonobos. The other one was still lemurs, I believe. And then we have the bonobos over here. And then we'll get into that lifted pathway, which is what we worked on during this video. So as you come out here, you do get one more view into the proboscis monkey, and there's that finished climbing rig from the previous video. And then we walk into the nice wooded area for the mandrill habitat, which is mostly in Houston Zoo, little small primates all through here. Like I said, I just made it earlier in the video. It's one big habitat. There's actually a tunnel that connects both sides underneath the ground as you go through here, and I borrowed that climbing rig from the workshop. I'll put the link in the description and in the comment below for you guys for that. And we have just different views as you walk through here, and we have a big circular outlook, and you have a good climbing rig that I built for the mandrills that are in here. It's a good size one, I should say. That's the word I was looking for. A good size climbing rig. And then we'll go back the other way, and I was hoping that this guy was gonna hop on this climbing rig, and they didn't. I was looking around like, oh, here they come. And they didn't get on it. They just kind of ran around, and then they went their separate ways. So off they go, but at least we did get a good view of them. Sometimes it's hard to get those views. They don't cooperate with you. Then we have this hut here that caused a lot of problems for me with climbing. It allowed them to escape. And then we'll go this way, and we're almost to the end of our little pathway through this wooded area for the mandrills with the Wortham Primate walk. And there's the other half of that climbing rig that I borrowed from the workshop right there. And then right here is the end of it. So next week, when we leave this section, we're gonna finish the Babirusa, I have a hard time saying that, habitat that's actually down this direction through that path. So I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for watching my video, and may the RNG odds be ever in your favor.